guys, it's Tim with Tabletop Terrors. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that's pretty basic as far as the concept goes, but it can actually be a really cool way to change your entire campaign or an adventure or even a combat, and it's really easy to apply. What we're talking about is the passage of time. So you might be thinking, what do you mean, a long rest, a short rest? No, that's not what I mean. I'm going to show you a couple of really cool ways that you can use the passage of time to stay in control and also really to just give your campaign some flavor. So here we go. So the first part of the passage of time that I want to discuss is at a campaign level, okay? Your heroes do amazing things, okay? So you're going to probably have campaign arcs where they defeat the big bad guy eventually, or at least one of his minions. That's stopping point. So in this instance, for the example, let's go ahead and say that my players are fighting this orcish army, right? The Uktai orcs of the north. And they're followers of Grumsh, they were marching on the elven cities. And through the devices of the players, that was all thwarted. The war's over, the battle is done, the XP has been handed out, the gold, the glory. It's difficult to move on to that next portion of the campaign without feeling a little flat. The way I do it is, I just say that 3 or 6 months has passed, right? In 3 or 6 months, a lot of things can happen. The king or the queen or whoever might be thinking, well, what have the PCs done for me lately, right? Because people have short memories. Other things can happen. It's, things that happen in the world. Maybe a new person has taken office, or even something as simple as a drought, right? What if a drought is occurring in the last 6 months, and now simple things like just getting food or rations is going to be more expensive, and it's going to just, like I said, add another layer because some time passed, okay? So that's one thing. Here's another thing. What an opportunity for your players to be able to role play, right? In 6 months or even a year, right? This means that they can actually change their personality traits, their flaws, their bonds, their ideals. So what about a bard, right? Their personality trait during the campaign was that they're a hopeless romantic and they're looking for their long-lost love or what have you. Well, let's say during the campaign, in the 6 months, in the time that passes, they meet somebody and it doesn't work out. So now that bard who was looking for a love now scorns love. It's an entire character change. And the list goes on. I mean, you could go to, let's say this, a rogue who's greedy, right? After a long, hard campaign, sees the horrors of war and how it affects the common man, well, now maybe that greed turns into something that's now charity. The rogue is actually charitable and feels guilty and now is on a quest for retribution. A fighter whose bond was that he wanted to find his long-lost family. Well, what if he finds them? It's a big step as a DM, but what if you let that happen? The passage of time can give the characters an opportunity to do a complete 180 as far as their role playing. They can change their bonds, their traits, their ideals. It can all work. So that's my point. My point is that at campaign level, don't be afraid after a big arc to slow things down and say 6 months or even a year passes. Because it's like real life. How many times do you lose touch with a friend, or maybe the adventuring party goes off and does their own thing for a year? And it really gives a cool opportunity when they all come back together. They might even have to relearn each other. So that is at a campaign level. All right, so the next passage of time I want to talk about is scaling it from a campaign level down to an adventure level. Now, again, we're all used to short rests, long rests, things like that. I'm talking about going beyond that. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I'll see in beginning dungeon masters or game masters is they feel like the story has to start right when the players, start in an area, and it has to go hour for hour until it's finished. That gets tedious. It's like watching a movie with no editing. It actually becomes monotonous. We want the interesting parts. That's why adventures, and that's why films, that's why they skip scenes. So don't be afraid to make something take a little longer than usual. For instance, let's say it's really difficult to find out where the bandits' hideout is. Don't be afraid to make that take a week. And if they get really high, it only takes 3 days as far as their roll. But by doing that, it creates a little more weight. It's not just, okay, I roll, I walk around the pub, I find out where the bandits are, we're going to go raid. It's not like that. Also, One of the other things I found is if you just treat the passage of time as, you know, a quick blurb, like, all right, then 3 days passes, I think it doesn't have that sense of just coolness. It doesn't have a sense of adventure. But what if you use those opportunities for a passage of time? Like in that week, you grow to know the innkeeper very well, and he tells you this tale, and he tells you about how his wife was murdered by the orcs and things like that. That creates this sense of wonder. And if you have some things you want to leak to the players that aren't necessarily, specific to the plot, but just are cool about your world, this is a fun way to do it. While time is passing, they're learning about these things. Then they don't feel like they're just getting some magic clue on a scroll. They can find these things out when time's passing. So don't be afraid to let time pass in your adventures. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you have to wait a month before you leave the city. And then you play out, okay, in the first week, this is what happens. In the second week, this is what happens. You're in control of the timetable. You got to be able to zoom all the way in and zoom all the way out and not be afraid to do it. All right, so the final thing, we're going to zoom down in our funnel. We went on a campaign level, we went on an adventure level. Now we're going to talk about an encounter level. So at an encounter level, this is where most people are the most conscious of time, especially because, spells have a duration, things last so many turns, things like that. But I think especially with 5th edition, I've run a few combats so far. It's so fast-paced that the passage of time really feels like that 6 seconds. I personally, my rounds, I say they're 10 seconds, frankly, because the math is easier. I think that it makes more sense. But that's just what I'm doing right now. I've done 6 seconds in the past. My point is the players actually feel like it's 10-second rounds. But one of the ways that I keep the pace quick without changing any of the rules or changing any of the mechanics, I keep a mental note, or I even jot down cool things that happen in the combat. What do I mean? Well, it's cool to recap. So let's say that, RJ the dwarf, he goes and he swings his battle axe and he lops a goblin's head off. Well, at the end of this round and starting in the next round, doing a quick recap can kind of make it seem fast-paced. And you got to be attentive to do this, but, you point at RJ and go, all right, RJ, don't forget, you just lopped the head off a goblin. So that goes rolling. It rolls past Lida, and then Tordik. Don't forget, you just did this. Now, don't say don't forget. I am just doing a YouTube video, and I think that's kind of how I'm talking. But if I was DMing, I would say, all right, the goblin head rolls past you. Your arrow strikes directly into the gnoll's eye. Now, as you see the eye explode, and then I turn to the other player, what do you do? Because by taking it, it's that action movie kind of fast pace. I'm recapping everything quickly. Now, you don't want to do it every time, but just when some cool stuff happens. And by doing that, again, you're controlling the passage of time, or at least the perception of the passage of time. So that's it. That's kind of the video for today. It really helped me in my last adventure. I'm definitely going to do it in my campaign. Give it a shot. Guys, subscribe if you want more videos like this. Comment. If you don't, comment below. And give me your ideas. What about you? The passage of time in your adventures, your encounters, your campaigns. Comment below. Tell me how you use the passage of time, or just tell me how I'm wrong and you think I'm crazy. Either way, thanks so much for watching. This is Tabletop Terrors.